Welcome back to Morning Joe. Top of the hour, live look at where we are. Los Angeles this morning. Still with us in New York are Willie Geist, Mike Barnicle, and Mark Halperin. Also joining the table, columnist for the Wall Street Journal, Peggy Noonan.
I gotta say, I'm still trying to figure out this Nobel Peace Prize thing. And I'm just wondering, okay, now when I said it was like me getting a Lifetime Achievement Award for my work in Hollywood, which of course I haven't started yet. That career starts 3 years from now. But it's like me getting that award at the beginning of it. I still don't get it. And I gotta say, in my defense, if the Nobel Committee had a chance, a do-over again, I would suggest that they would not give him the Nobel Peace Prize.
I wonder how that question was asked. Did you really deserve it, Mr. President?
I don't know, but Mike Barnicle, since he's got the Nobel Peace Prize, he's tripled the number of troops in Afghanistan, tripled them, and of course, we've got Libya and many other things. It is. I'm sure that they are wringing their hands, the Nobel Committee, this
Certainly
morning.
Certainly not the president's fault.
Well, you know, the Nobel Peace Prize being awarded to President Obama, in retrospect, it's like, 24-year-old actors and rappers writing their autobiographies, at the age of 24. He did nothing to get the Nobel Peace Prize. It was given as a gesture, I think, of what the goodwill that he represented at the time. And you're right. I mean, now he's saddled with all the burdens and problems of the presidency.
Right.
And in Stockholm, they're probably saying, geez.
Well, Mark Halperin has to write many chapters about Barack Obama and the upcoming game change, too. So let's go to him now for a defense of the president receiving the Nobel Prize. I'm joking, but seriously, he had to speak about it yesterday. It is ironic since he received the war award. He's tripled the number of troops in Afghanistan. He has, I guess, about 120, 130 cruise missiles on Libya, getting in the middle of a civil war in Africa. This is not an anti-war peacenik in the White House.
Well, the irony is extended even further because the man he replaced, he largely got the Peace Prize because he wasn't George Bush, and the Europeans were so delighted to have a new American president. By almost every metric you can use in terms of being a muscular executive, acting alone without congressional authority, extending the Bush policies overseas, particularly in the war on terror in Afghanistan and Iraq, he's been more hawkish than George Bush.
He really has, Mika. He has extended most of the policies of George W. Bush and Dick Cheney.
Yes, but he characterizes some of them differently. Peggy Noonan.
Does that make it all right? That is the best spin I have heard this morning.
Peggy Noonan, what of those in the administration, what do you say to those who say this isn't actually war? This is a humanitarian effort in Libya. It's not war, and we're not taking him out, although Gaddafi must go.
Yeah, Mika, the thing here is that we don't know what this is. There are already those who were great proponents of moving forward with the no-fly zone who are starting to talk about, okay, next we're going to need special forces on the ground in order to guide the rebels there who don't seem to be fully professional organizations, and then once they topple Gaddafi, or once Gaddafi leaves, or once he falls, we will probably need peacekeeping forces because we don't know what's going to fill the vacuum of Gaddafi himself. If that happens, then you're talking a significant amount of money, time, boots on the ground. The president is saying, I don't want that to happen. I think between the lines he's saying that. He's saying this is a short, discrete mission that has to do with the no-fly zone that, by suggestion, will take out Gaddafi, and there's no talk of what happens next. So we don't know what this thing is, Mika. We don't know if it's the beginning of something long and extended that we'll all be talking about a year from now or not.
And
of
like
course,
war to me.
It does look like war. If you look at these images, it's certainly not a spring training game in Sarasota. Mike Barnicle, though, we're going to get to news in 60 seconds. But first, Mike, I think the biggest danger here is the fact we don't know who we're fighting for. We could be putting in Al-Qaeda in North Africa with a lot of oil. We have no idea who these rebels are or what kind of government they'll run.
Well, there are two huge issues there, Joe, and you just raised one of them. We don't know who are these rebels, the insurgents. We don't know what what elements are encompassed within them. The second thing we do know is that they are virtually leaderless. There's no command and control. And we also know that you can't enforce a rollback of Gaddafi's forces entirely by air. You just can't do it. You can bomb them from now until the end of this year, but that infantry will move during the evening hours, and eventually, if we decide to take on the infantry, Gaddafi's infantry on the ground, there will be civilian casualties because they will enmesh themselves within civilian areas. And that's what you call war.
That is war.
All right, coalition airstrikes are hitting Libya for a sixth day today amid questions about the future of the international effort. Overnight, anti-aircraft gunfire and several explosions were heard in Tripoli, where coalition aircraft hit a key fuel depot. Western strikes have also reportedly destroyed government tanks on the outskirts of Misrata. But tanks inside the insurgent stronghold have not been hit. According to residents in Libya's third largest city, Operation Odyssey Dawn has failed to stop shootings by snipers who have reportedly killed dozens and wounded hundreds of people there. Meanwhile, off the coast of Libya, NATO warships are now on patrol enforcing the U.S. arms embargo against the country. And as Western warplanes continue their international campaign in Libya, pressure is mounting on President Obama to outline his specific goals in the conflict. Speaking on Hardball last night, Deputy National Security Advisor Dennis McDonough tried to explain Obama's policies on foreign intervention.
The president brought the international community along, I think, with an expanded set of authorities out of the United Nations Security Council. We thought it was much more important, rather than sit by and watch the slaughter of these innocents, to bring along the international community with the Security Council resolution. So we didn't wait to see where the international community was. We brought the international community along. So now we have an opportunity to press for the kind of opportunity for the opposition that I think they're looking for, and they're taking.
In an interview with the Spanish language network Univision, President Obama outlined the U.S.'s exit strategy.
The exit strategy will be executed this week in the sense that we will be pulling back from our much more active efforts to shape the environment. We'll still be in a support role. We'll still be providing jamming and intelligence and other assets that are unique to us.
44. Okay. All right, Mark Halperin, we showed some polls yesterday out from Gallup, and I want to get your take on it because Peggy and Mike, this discussion has just led to what we're hearing, the conclusion that Americans don't know what's next in Libya, and there's a general exhaustion with war. I want you to look at this first number. Yesterday, Joe Klein said it right. It's striking how low the approval number is. Usually at the start of almost any military operation, you see numbers in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But Gallup yesterday asked about America's view of our military action in Libya. Only 47% approve, 37% disapprove. And Mark, a more striking number is the president's overall approval rating, which of course we were all commending the president for being at 50%, and he was at 50% just a month ago, saying that he looked like he was on his way to being reelected. The president's numbers have dropped 6 points. Those are the numbers he was at right before the midterm election when Democrats lost so badly last year. What's going on, Mark?
Well, in terms of the president's approval, he sort of has now, it's clear over time, both a floor and a ceiling. I don't think it's going to take a lot for him to rise much above 50 or to drop below that 44 very much because people are pretty much locked in. I think America has a lot of problems right now, a lot of challenges the country faces. I think for most Americans, the reason you don't see the rallying around the president and the approval for this mission, most Americans think, you know what, whatever it is the president's trying to do in Libya, we got bigger concerns that he should be focused on. When his approval was higher, he was focused. He was talking more about jobs. He was talking more about the problems here at home. I think this is another overseas mission that's ambiguous and just not that relevant to most people.
You know, Peggy Noonan, Mika, and I say it all the time, but it's the truth. We go around and we give speeches on college campuses, community organizations, chambers. We always ask, do you support this military mission or that military mission? And my gosh, the almost contempt that most Americans have for what's going on in Afghanistan, what's going on in Libya now. It's stunning. You cannot find people, and we don't ask it in a leading way. You can't find people out there that support these operations.
No, there's two things. One, speaking to what Mark said, Mark, look, it seems to me Obama's gone through many ups and downs as president. His first year with health care, I think it looked like, whoa, he's off subject. Then we had the New Orleans oil spill, and it started to look like he was a little snake bit. I feel like now with Libya, because it is unclear, because it is ambiguous, because we don't know exactly, the public doesn't know exactly what we're doing, it's starting to look incompetent. That is a bad way for an American president to look, certainly the first time he takes an initiative and moves forward militarily. So I think he's in a bad place, and I always think his numbers are a little lower than they show, you know?
You know, we mentioned this yesterday, and at least I did. I am surprised that he's as high as he is.
So am I.
Because of the level of exhaustion in this country that people have, not necessarily with Barack Obama, but with Afghanistan, with Iraq, with the fact that we have a huge number of armed forces deployed off the coast of Japan, helping the Japanese. That's who we are. We're there to help. And now Libya. And let's be honest here. If Barack Obama had chosen to do nothing with regard to Libya, and we had had an act of mass homicide in Benghazi with multiple numbers killed by Gaddafi, cable news operations would be showing those pictures every day, all day, and he'd be even in worse shape than he is today.
He'd be accused of passivity.
Yes.
He'd be accused of cluelessness. But let me throw out another idea. Since he's taken this action, Gaddafi said, I'm going to be cruel and brutal to Benghazi. America moved in before it happened. Okay, fine. We're launching missiles. We're doing all this stuff. Why isn't the president coming forward at this point, X number of days into this endeavor, and talking to the American people and saying, this is what we're doing. This is the exact moment at which we decided to do it. This is why we're doing it. This is how we see it ending. This is how I will insist it ends.
Because he can't answer the handoff question, which is essential.
When you can't answer those questions, maybe you're in the wrong place.
Well, I think if they don't figure out how to do the handoff, then this is going to turn out to have been done the wrong way and maybe the wrong thing to do.
All right.
Listen, you know, the bottom line is, Peggy, they don't know what's next. They don't know what's next because the French don't have the ability to carry out these attacks. The British have run out of missiles. They used their 12, which they've been saving up since 47. They don't have any more missiles. What happens if Gaddafi goes in to slaughter people in Benghazi? Then suddenly the Americans are going to have to go in. They don't know. The President of the United States does not know what is next. And this is what I've been saying to Republicans and Democrats for many years now. The problem is, and it's what Colin Powell has been saying for decades, it's what Cap Weinberger was saying, if you don't know what the triggering event is to get your forces out of a war, then you don't put your forces in a war. We don't have that triggering event in Libya, and a decade later, after two American presidents, Willie Geist, we still don't have the triggering event in Afghanistan. These are conflicts where we throw our troops in there because there are some cable TV images that make Americans say, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. And then they do it and they get in. And then, of course, once again, it is the men and women who wear the uniforms of the armed forces of the United States of America who bear the disproportionate impact along with their families. And it's happening again.
And another question that the president's going to have to answer today, which I've heard so many people ask over the last few days, is this who we are now? Is this part of our foreign policy? Are we the standard bearer? Because yesterday, for example, in Syria, 15 protesters were shot dead in the street. They were protesting. Government forces went in and killed them in the street. It's happening in Yemen. It's happening, of course, in Bahrain. How are we going to pick and choose what is the standard when we decide it's worthwhile to go in, it's worth the lives, perhaps, of our own troops, it's worth our treasure at a time when we don't have a lot of treasure to spare? The president's going to have to face up to that soon.
And by the way, Mika, people were gunned down yesterday in the streets of Syria. They were, gunned down in Yemen, gunned down everywhere. Bahrain. Why are we choosing the wars that we're choosing?
I think there's not really a good answer to that question. I think that question hangs out there. We were doing a book event yesterday, and it was like 1,500 people asked the question, are you happy with the direction of this country? Nobody raised their hand. Nobody. And the context of the question was who could win in the next presidential election? What Republican is out there? And we couldn't think of one either.
No answers.
But the fact is that this president, if he wins the next election, may win by default at this point because there isn't a good Republican candidate out there. So it's kind of we're kind of in a weird middle zone, a very uncomfortable place. And it comes back to where we stand in the unemployment situation, the housing situation. People want that fixed.
No doubt about it. We'll be right back with Dr. Brzezinski.